Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at some pretty fascinating ideas from Osho on loneliness and solitude.
Okay.
And we use these words kind of interchangeably a lot,
Yeah.
but Osho saw them as like profoundly different experiences.
Mm.
And I think as we get into it, you might find that his perspective is like surprisingly relevant to your own life.
Yeah.
Just for a little bit of context, Osho was an Indian spiritual teacher and
Mhm.
philosopher who really got deep into the human condition.
Yeah, and you know what I think is really intriguing about his approach to loneliness
Okay.
is that he really views it as kind of an inner signal or a message we shouldn't ignore.
Hmm.
He believed that feeling lonely isn't simply about being physically alone,
Mm.
but it often stems from like a disconnect with our true selves.
Right.
It's almost as if we're trying to like fill a void with external things like relationships or entertainment, achievements.
Hmm.
But these things only offer like temporary relief.
I feel that, yeah, like trying to quiet that feeling of emptiness with like endless scrolling on social media or something.
Yeah.
You get like a momentary distraction,
Mm.
but then that underlying feeling kind of always returns.
Absolutely.
So how did Osho propose we sort of escape this cycle of seeking fulfillment outside ourselves?
Well, that's where his concept of solitude comes in.
Okay.
Osho really championed solitude as a deliberate act of embracing your own company.
Hmm.
And he actually preferred the term aloneness
Okay.
to emphasize a sense of wholeness, not isolation.
I see.
It's not about feeling incomplete, but about finding, contentment and peace in your own presence.
So it's almost like consciously choosing to be alone and like
Yeah.
genuinely enjoying it.
Exactly.
Okay. But how do we shift our perception away from, the more common association of being alone with negativity?
Well, Osho's perspective here is actually quite radical.
Okay.
He posits that solitude is a state of self-love and acceptance,
Hmm.
where we can create space for reflection, creativity, and connecting with our inner world.
I like that.
And this isn't about suppressing our thoughts and emotions,
Right.
but rather about cultivating awareness.
So this is where it gets really interesting to me. Because Osho believed that to achieve this state of solitude required like practicing awareness and mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And he suggests that allowing our thoughts and emotions to just be without judgment allows us to see ourselves from like a whole new perspective.
Precisely. And in that space of non-judgmental awareness,
Yeah.
we start to realize that our inherent worth isn't contingent upon others. We possess this intrinsic value that exists independently.
Right.
And solitude then becomes a sanctuary for self-discovery, a place where we can explore who we are, without those external pressures.
Wow, that's such a powerful concept. So Osho saw loneliness as a signal pointing us inward towards a deeper relationship with ourselves.
Yes.
But how do we make that shift from feeling lonely to embracing solitude?
Osho advocated for confronting loneliness head-on,
Okay.
rather than shying away from it. He actually saw it as a catalyst for growth,
I see.
like an entry point to profound self-awareness.
So instead of trying to escape that feeling of loneliness, we should lean into it.
Right.
It seems kind of counterintuitive to what like a lot of us are used to.
It might feel counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but by acknowledging and exploring those uncomfortable feelings,
Mm-hmm.
we can begin to understand their root. And that understanding paves the way to experiencing solitude not as isolation,
Right.
but as a source of deep fulfillment.
This all makes sense.
Oh, okay.
But facing those like uncomfortable emotions head on can be challenging.
It can.
And Osho seemed to place a lot of emphasis on meditation and self-reflection to facilitate this process.
Yes.
Why were those practices so crucial in his view?
Well, Osho saw meditation as this incredibly powerful tool for quieting the constant chatter in our minds.
Mm-hmm.
He believed that by stilling the mind, we could more readily appreciate the stillness and peace of aloneness.
Right.
Think of it like clearing away mental clutter to make space for something deeper.
So it's not just about sitting in silence.
No.
It's about learning to observe our thoughts without getting swept away by them.
Exactly.
Almost like watching clouds drift by without judgment.
Exactly. He referred to this as witnessing.
Okay.
We become observers of our thoughts and emotions, noticing them without judgment or attachment.
I see.
And this practice allows us to see the patterns in our thinking, those habitual tendencies that often create fear and anxiety,
Yeah.
which ultimately fuel our sense of disconnect.
And by becoming aware of these patterns, we can start to loosen their grip on us.
Yes.
It's like gaining insight into like the inner workings of our own minds, empowering us to like take control rather than being ruled by them.
Absolutely.
But Osho took this concept even further, didn't he?
He did.
He saw solitude as a pathway to something much larger, self-realization.
Yes.
He proposed that solitude could help us achieve a sense of unity with the universe.
Mm.
It's almost as if he believed that finding inner peace wasn't like the end goal,
Right.
but rather a stepping stone to realizing our interconnectedness with everything.
Yes, that's a beautiful way to put it.
Wow.
You know, Osho saw loneliness as this painful experience of separation,
Mm-hmm.
whereas solitude offered a sense of oneness, a feeling of interconnectedness that went beyond our individual relationships.
Hmm.
You know, imagine that feeling of awe when you look up at the night sky
Yeah.
and sense the vastness of the universe. It's like a glimpse into that interconnectedness.
That's a really profound thought, but it seems like society kind of pushes us in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Like conditioning us to believe that being alone is something to avoid.
Absolutely. Osho was very clear about the fact that we're often led to believe that solitude is a sign of failure or sadness, something to be avoided at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
It's as if constant busyness and surrounding ourselves with people are the only paths to happiness and success.
So in essence, Osho was challenging this deeply ingrained belief that being alone is negative.
Precisely, he proposed that embracing solitude and rejecting those societal pressures could be a path to true liberation. You know, it's about breaking free from those limiting beliefs and redefining what it means to be alone.
Right.
It's a pretty radical and empowering message.
This is all so fascinating. We've uncovered Osho's perspective on loneliness as a call for deeper self-connection,
Yeah.
and solitude as a path to self-discovery, inner peace, and even a sense of unity with the universe.
Well, pretty amazing.
But I'm eager to learn more about how we can practically apply these ideas in our lives.
Okay.
Can we dive into those practical steps in the next part of our deep dive?
Absolutely. Let's unpack Osho's insights on how to cultivate solitude in our daily life.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Okay, so we're back, continuing our deep dive into Osho's perspective on loneliness and solitude.
Yeah.
And we've established that, he saw loneliness as a call to cultivate a deeper relationship with ourselves, with solitude as the path to get there. But how do we actually incorporate more solitude into our lives?
Right.
Like, especially in a world that seems to constantly demand our attention.
You know, it's interesting because Osho didn't advocate for complete isolation.
Mm-hmm.
He acknowledged the value of human connection,
Right.
but he firmly believed that, like, a healthy relationship with oneself is the bedrock of all other relationships.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, you can't authentically connect with others until
Right.
you've established a strong connection with yourself.
Exactly.
But where do we start? Like, the idea of cultivating solitude in our daily lives can feel a bit daunting, especially for those of us who are, used to that constant external stimulation.
Yeah, Osho offered some practical guidance for this.
Okay.
He suggested starting small, like weaving moments of solitude into your everyday routine.
Okay.
It could be something as simple as taking a walk in nature by yourself or disconnecting from technology for a while, or spending a few minutes each day in quiet contemplation.
Okay.
Even these small acts of disconnection can make a big difference.
Those are great starting points.
Yeah.
I can see how even a brief respite from the constant barrage of notifications and information overload from our devices can, create a sense of peace.
Right.
But what about those deeper seated fears and insecurities that often surface when we're alone? How do we face those head on?
Yeah.
They can feel quite vulnerable.
Osho believed that acceptance and vulnerability were paramount in this process.
Okay.
He encouraged people to embrace their imperfections, to acknowledge their fears and anxieties without judgment or harsh self-criticism.
So rather than trying to suppress or deny those uncomfortable feelings, we should simply allow ourselves to experience them.
Yes.
It seems counterintuitive, but I can see how, resisting those feelings only gives them more power.
It does, and by accepting those emotions as part of the human experience, we create space for healing and growth. We're acknowledging that it's okay to not be okay all the time.
Right.
It's an act of self-compassion.
That's a great point. It's about giving ourselves permission to be fully human.
Yes.
With all our complexities and imperfections.
Exactly.
This idea of radical self-acceptance is quite liberating, isn't it?
It is.
It allows us to kind of move through the world with more authenticity and compassion.
Absolutely.
For ourselves and others. Now, speaking of those moments when loneliness inevitably creeps in and we feel that urge to reach for external distractions, how do we navigate those?
That's a great question. It's like we're so conditioned to distract ourselves from discomfort that we rarely give ourselves the opportunity to sit with it and understand what it's trying to tell us.
Okay.
Osho had a really interesting suggestion for those moments.
Okay, what's that?
Instead of immediately seeking distraction,
Okay.
he encouraged us to pause and turn inward, asking ourselves, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What need am I trying to fulfill?
Hmm.
It's a powerful way to shift from, those reactive patterns
Yeah.
to a more conscious way of being.
So it's about using those moments of loneliness as like a springboard for deeper self-awareness.
Exactly.
It almost sounds like a form of mindfulness practice, like paying attention to our feelings and exploring their root causes without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
It's about becoming a detective of our own inner world.
You hit the nail on the head.
Wow.
By approaching those uncomfortable feelings with curiosity rather than fear,
Right.
we can start to break free from those automatic reactions that keep us trapped in those cycles of loneliness.
I see.
And speaking of practices, we've touched on meditation a bit,
Yeah.
which Osho considered like a cornerstone of cultivating solitude.
Yes. He seemed to place a lot of emphasis on meditation.
He did.
Can you unpack a bit more about why it was so central to his teachings?
Well, Osho believed that meditation cultivated a sense of detachment from our thoughts and emotions.
Hmm.
By simply observing our thoughts without judgment, we create space between ourselves and those thoughts.
Okay.
This space allows us to realize that we are not our thoughts, but rather the observer of those thoughts.
It's like we're separating our sense of self from the constant stream of mental chatter.
Yes.
We're not getting caught up in the stories our minds create,
Right.
but rather witnessing those stories with a sense of detachment.
Exactly.
That must be incredibly freeing.
It is. It's about reclaiming our power over our minds.
Okay.
And that sense of empowerment is crucial for embracing solitude.
Right.
When we're no longer controlled by our thoughts and emotions,
Mm-hmm.
we can choose to be alone without feeling lonely.
That's so insightful. So meditation kind of equips us with the tools
Yes.
to navigate those challenging emotions
Right.
that can surface when we're alone,
Exactly.
helping us cultivate a sense of inner peace and stability.
It does.
But there's another layer to Osho's teachings on solitude that I find particularly fascinating.
Okay.
The idea of it as a path to self-realization and a sense of unity with the universe.
That's a beautiful concept, and it might be the most challenging aspect of his teachings. He believed that through solitude, we can tap into a deeper level of consciousness, a state of being that transcends the limitations of our individual egos. Right. He described it as like a feeling of oneness with everything, Wow. a profound sense of interconnectedness. It's like recognizing that we're all part of this grand cosmic tapestry woven together by an invisible thread.
It's like when you experience the vastness of nature and feel a sense of awe and wonder,
Yes.
or when you connect with another person on a deeply soulful level.
Mm.
Those experiences kind of offer a glimpse into that underlying unity
Exactly.
that connects us all.
Those moments of transcendence,
Yeah.
those glimpses into the interconnectedness of all things,
Mm-hmm.
are often accessed through the portal of solitude.
So in a sense, Osho was suggesting that solitude isn't about isolation,
No.
but about tapping into a profound level of connection,
Yes.
both with ourselves and with the universe.
Exactly.
It's about shifting our perspective from a limited sense of self to a more expansive sense of belonging, a realization that we are all part of something much greater than ourselves. But it seems like a paradox, doesn't it?
It does.
We're often told that connecting with others is the path to happiness.
Right.
Yet Osho suggests that solitude can lead to an even deeper sense of connection.
It's a beautiful paradox.
Yeah.
And it really challenges that conventional view of solitude as something to be avoided.
But how do we reconcile this idea with, like, the societal pressures that often discourage solitude?
Yeah.
It's not always easy to, like, go against the grain
Right.
and embrace something that's often viewed as negative or unproductive.
Osho was a rebel in many ways,
Hmm.
but he didn't advocate for blindly rejecting societal norms.
Okay.
He encouraged people to question those beliefs that limit our potential for growth and happiness.
Hmm.
He reminded us that many of our fears and anxieties around solitude are rooted in social conditioning, not in our true nature.
I see.
It's like we've inherited these beliefs about being alone without ever stopping to examine whether they serve us.
So it's about recognizing that those limiting beliefs are learned, not inherent.
Exactly.
And that by challenging those beliefs, we can open ourselves up to a more authentic and fulfilling way of being.
Absolutely. It's like we're reclaiming our right to be alone, to find peace and fulfillment in our own company without needing that external validation.
You've captured it perfectly, and that act of reclaiming can be incredibly empowering.
It can.
It allows us to live more intentionally guided by our own inner compass rather than by societal expectations.
Absolutely.
It's a journey of self-discovery and liberation. We've covered so much ground
We have.
in our exploration of Osho's unique perspective on loneliness and solitude. We've talked about shifting our mindset from fearing loneliness to embracing solitude,
Yeah.
utilizing practices like meditation and self-reflection to deepen our self-awareness,
Right.
and challenging those societal norms that limit our understanding of being alone.
We've covered a lot.
But I'm eager to hear more about the specific benefits Osho believed we could gain from embracing solitude.
Okay.
We've touched on them briefly, but I'd love to delve deeper into how Osho saw solitude as a catalyst for personal growth and transformation.
Absolutely. Let's explore how Osho believed solitude could enhance our lives and empower us to become the best versions of ourselves.
Welcome back to our deep dive, into Osho's teachings on loneliness and solitude.
Yeah.
We've explored how he saw loneliness as a catalyst for a deeper relationship with ourselves, solitude being the pathway to get there.
Right.
And we've talked about some practical steps to cultivate solitude in our busy lives,
Yeah.
even challenging some societal norms along the way.
We did.
But let's kind of shift gears a bit now
Okay.
and explore the tangible benefits Osho attributed to embracing solitude. Like, what did he believe we could gain from spending time alone?
Well, Osho really viewed solitude as a wellspring of creativity. He believed that when we disconnect from the external world and turn inward, we tap into this reservoir of inspiration and imagination that's often stifled by the constant demands of daily life.
Yeah, it's like when we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation, it's hard for those creative sparks to ignite.
It is.
So solitude provides the mental space for new ideas to kind of emerge and take shape.
Exactly. It's no coincidence that artists, writers, musicians,
Right.
they often retreat into solitude to create their masterpieces.
Yeah.
It's in those quiet moments of contemplation, away from the distractions and pressures of the world, that inspiration often strikes.
Makes sense. And it's not just about artistic creation.
Right.
This applies to any field where innovation and, fresh perspectives are valued.
Absolutely.
It's like when you're struggling with a problem and you finally step away from it for a while,
Yeah.
suddenly when you least expect it, the solution appears out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Could it be that those moments of solitude, those mental breaks,
Yeah.
are what allow us to kind of see things with fresh eyes
I think so.
and connect the dots in new and insightful ways?
Yeah, that's a great observation. Solitude allows us to step off the treadmill of our busy lives and gain a wider perspective. It's in those moments of stillness that we can often see the bigger picture and make those creative leaps.
Right. But creativity is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Osho also emphasized the role of solitude in cultivating deeper self-awareness.
It did.
And that resonates with me on the personal level. It's like in the stillness of solitude, we finally have the time and space to truly get to know ourselves.
Yes.
Our thoughts, emotions, values, aspirations, all those things that make us who we are.
Absolutely. It's like holding up a mirror to our soul.
And that self-knowledge is invaluable
It is.
because it allows us to, make more conscious choices, to live in alignment with our authentic selves, rather than, being swept along by those external forces.
Right. It's about becoming the author of our own lives.
Yeah.
Writing our own stories.
Right, rather than just living on autopilot,
Exactly.
blindly following someone else's script.
Yeah, and there's a sense of empowerment that comes with that.
There is.
Absolutely. That sense of agency,
Yeah.
that ability to make conscious choices based on a deep understanding of ourselves is truly liberating.
But Osho went even further than creativity and self-awareness.
He did.
He also linked solitude to the development of inner strength and resilience.
Yeah.
That's an interesting connection.
Yeah.
How did he see solitude as fostering those qualities?
He believed that by confronting our fears and insecurities in the safe haven of solitude,
Yeah.
we develop a greater capacity to cope with challenges and setbacks.
Okay.
It's like building up our emotional muscles through a process of inner confrontation.
So it's like facing our inner demons in a controlled environment where we can learn to navigate those difficult emotions without, the added pressure of external judgment.
Right.
And by doing so, we become better equipped to handle whatever life throws our way.
Precisely. Think of it this way.
Okay.
When we learn to be comfortable with our own company,
Mm,
we become less dependent on external validation and approval.
right.
We develop a sense of inner security that's not contingent upon the opinions or actions of others.
We become more self-reliant
Yeah.
and less swayed by the winds of other people's perceptions.
Exactly.
It's like developing a strong inner core
Yeah.
that allows us to weather any storm.
Yeah. But this idea of solitude fostering inner strength and resilience is a bit counterintuitive, isn't it?
It is.
We often associate strength with social connections and support systems.
I do.
It does seem counterintuitive in a culture that often equates connection with strength.
Right.
But Osho is pointing to a different kind of strength,
Right.
a strength that comes from within, from a deep sense of self-acceptance and knowing that we are enough even when we're alone.
I like that.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that solitude doesn't negate the importance of human connection.
Right.
It simply highlights the value of cultivating a strong relationship with ourselves as the foundation for all other relationships.
That makes sense. It's like we're not meant to live in complete isolation, but we are meant to be comfortable being alone with ourselves.
Exactly. And perhaps that inner strength cultivated through solitude actually enhances our capacity for empathy and compassion.
You've hit on a crucial point.
Mm.
Osho believed that solitude, with its emphasis on self-reflection and understanding our own emotions, can actually lead to a deeper understanding of the human experience as a whole.
So by understanding ourselves better, by confronting our own fears and insecurities, we become more capable of understanding and empathizing with others who are going through similar experiences.
We cultivate a deeper sense of compassion that extends beyond ourselves.
And that's a powerful antidote to the loneliness and isolation that many people feel even when surrounded by others.
This has been such an enlightening conversation.
It has.
Yeah, we've explored so many facets of Osho's teachings.
Yeah.
The fundamental distinction between loneliness and solitude. The practical steps to cultivate more solitude in our lives.
Right.
And the profound benefits that he believed could arise from embracing those moments of aloneness.
You covered a lot.
His ideas really challenge us to rethink our relationship with being alone, don't they?
They do. Osho's perspective offers a radical reframing of solitude not as something to be feared or avoided,
Right.
but as a source of creativity, self-discovery, inner strength, and even deeper connection with ourselves and humanity.
Yeah, it's like he's inviting us to see solitude as a gift, an opportunity to tap into our full potential. As we wrap up our deep dive into Osho's teachings, what's like one key takeaway you hope our listeners will carry with them?
I think the most important message is that solitude is not the enemy. It's not a sign of weakness or failure.
Right.
It's a pathway to profound self-discovery and growth. It's in those quiet moments of aloneness that we can connect with our deepest selves, tap into our inner wisdom, and cultivate the qualities that allow us to live more fulfilling and meaningful lives.
What a beautiful reminder. So to our listener, as you go about your day, consider Osho's words.
Yeah.
Maybe experiment with carving out a little more solitude in your life, even just a few minutes of quiet contemplation.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by the transformative power of simply being alone with yourself.
I think so.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the profound world of Osho.
It was my pleasure.